Mr. Bazzani?
Yes.
Mr. Nicosia?
Here.
All present.
Would you all join me in the invocation and pledge of allegiance, please? Heavenly Father, we gather today to do the county's business. Let us be mindful of all things that affect the county today and in the future. And let us prepare for the coming years with the budget and the changing of everything that's going to happen. For it's in your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item is approval of the minutes from August 6th.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is adoption of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is matters presented by the board. Can you do it now? Might as well.
Gentlemen, at our next meeting, had the Middle Peninsula Planning District Commission has sent something over to Mr. Wilmot. We have come up against some problems with getting our reimbursements from the state when we have a project. We never thought we'd be in this position. When I started on the Planning District Commission, we had a budget of about $750,000. Our budget now is $14 million. So what happens is we are running up against the issues of we have a project we're working on, the reimbursement doesn't come in time, and we are struggling to continue funding that project. So what the Planning District Commission has done is they've gone to a bank, and we have put a little revolving fund in there so that we can borrow on that, keep that project going, and then when we get that reimbursement, just put it towards that bank account. We have to pass a resolution at our next meeting. Mr. Wilmot will be preparing that for us in the time. It'll be based on what the PDC is doing and the other member localities. It's going to be easier than I thought it was going to be because King and Queen has stepped up and said, we have to, we'll fund the whole thing. But there will still be a component of the parties of the willing wanting to participate. So we will have that coming before us, and it could mean that at some point we would have to pay for the part of the fund, but once that money comes back as a reimbursement, it would come back to us. It would be a short-term, very short-term loan, probably no more than 2 weeks at the time. But I think King and Queen has really pretty much taken it out of everybody's control as long as they are willing to participate. But that's going to be coming. He's waiting on the proper paperwork, and that'll come to us once we get that from them.
Why the delay? Is there, administrative issues that are up there that they just won't act on reimbursing?
Well, that's some of it, but it's some of them. We have lost so much institutional knowledge at the departments at the Commonwealth that it takes them a lot longer to check off all their boxes. So where it used to take 30 days to get that reimbursement, sometimes it's taken 60, 90, at worst case 120 days. So it's a minimal thing, but we want to keep the good work that they're doing moving, and this is going to ensure that we can keep that moving.
It sounds like the same issues we're having with DEQ.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, next item is county administrator items.
Thank you. I hope that you will not be hearing our HVAC unit squealing anymore. We have had it repaired and reassessed and repaired, so hopefully that is over with, and for people who heard strange noises during the meeting. Secondly, we did, as you all, the board, had passed renewal for our community rating system, our CRS. We did receive our notice that it has been approved for another year, which is a great thing. And then I wanted to remind the board and maybe explain a little bit more about the master planning, the park master planning meeting that's tomorrow at 6 o'clock at TC Walker. This is a meeting that's open to the public, and anyone can come and they'll hear the presentation from the staff at DCR about what's planned for the facility. and then there'll be time for public comment. I shared with the board a letter that was written by the head of the Friends of the Park group, who has expressed, as well as I have expressed and others, concern that the master plan does not include enough open space that's programmable for special events. And if that does not occur, then, and there's no space for these events, then they cannot be held there. And many of other state parks, Belle Isle, Westmoreland, I mean, many of them hold local civic community events, the locality events. The park itself puts on larger events. Obviously, the Friends group may want to put on events. And what's planned for right now is a very small area for small music events. At one point, not looking at the main side of Machicomico, but at the second side, which was the original purchase of land over by Rosewell, we had thought maybe the park would be able to accommodate hosting the next reenactment of Battle of the Hook. We haven't been able to do that since 2013. People are still talking about it. And it takes a good amount of farm land, as well as having area for parking and things. So there is a reverence and a concern that we want to honor that the facility is focused on the Virginia Indian history. But I think that many people believe that it is not a conflict to, 4 or 5 times a year or whatever, to have a large event at the park. And it would be a economic driver. People could be coming to an event at the park that would never have come otherwise, but for the event, and then they learn about the Virginia Indians while they're there through the interpretive programs. So what normally happens is whatever comes out of this master plan, if any final changes, this goes to the General Assembly, the plan is adopted, and it's adopted for 10 years. So I think it's important that our public come out in full force, and any board members who can, and at least listen to the constituents. It may not be that you want to speak, but just to hear what our public is asking for at the park. And that all builds into the state's capital improvement plan for their parks.
This is Machicomico?
It's at Machicomico, yes, it is. But I mean, it is about the Machicomico State Park with both sides, the main area at Timberneck, and also the other side that's pretty much undeveloped right now at Rosewell. But the meeting will be at T.C. Walker in the auditorium at 6 o'clock tomorrow night. And I was going to give an update on the Marius Road situation, but I thought that would be much more appropriate if we could ask Ms. Legg to do that, because she knows hot off the press information. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is citizen comment period. Please limit your topics to the work session agenda. Please come forward, state your name, magisterial district, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Anyone like to speak? Come on up. Okay. Ms. Cronin? No comments. Okay. We'll move to the work session agenda. Update on public utilities, Ms. Legg.
Water's coming with me. Good evening. While Ms. Cronin is pulling up the presentation, I just wanted to let you know that tonight's presentation is going to be very information heavy. And I have done my best to consolidate and try to make it as easy to understand as possible. But a few key things is, one is to bring you up to speed on some really significant issues in utilities, but also to prepare us all for what's probably going to be a difficult capital budget development for us, as well as I would hope to receive some direction with regards to expansion and compliance issues. So tonight, what I am going to touch on are some current projects and ARPA update, the pump stations and capacity concerns that we have discovered, water treatment plant updates, along with an update with our DEQ permit issues, where we currently stand with the FY25 budget and revenue, what our capital needs outlook looks like, and then next steps. So some current projects that are occurring right now, the lead service line inventory. This was a mandate from the EPA that went into effect in 2021, and utilities across the country had until October 16th of this year to submit an inventory of all of the service lines, not only the locality-owned ones, but also the private service lines. My staff was not aware of this mandate until 2024, so we had a very small window of time to complete this. One grace, if we can call it that, is that when you submit an inventory, you are allowed to submit unknowns, meaning if you cannot identify lines for whatever reason, you can list them as unknown, but you are still required to go back and identify them. So again, because of our time crunch, we submitted our inventory and we were able to take all of the buildings that were built after lead service lines were banned, and we could automatically identify those as non-lead. Anything else that we could not easily put our hands on, we identified as unknown. The second piece of that is that we are then required to mail notices to every property that was identified as unknown within 30 days. We mailed out 3,500 notices by November 15th. That had to include properties that may not even be an active account anymore. So for example, take the old Page Middle School. We had to identify. So that's why that number is so high. The inventory is supposed to be a living document, so we will continue to update, and now that we've gotten past that first rush, we'll be able to go back into our records and do some research and update accordingly. Each year, as the list is left with unknowns, those property owners are required to be notified again. Yes?
So the lead lines, these are people that are on the current water system, correct? These are not individuals that have their own wells.
Correct.
So these are, of the 5,700 customers or so, over half of them have lines that potentially are lead.
So we have about 5,200 water accounts that are active. The interesting piece of that is then we also have these master meters. So take your mobile home parks, your apartment complexes, that sort of thing. That is 1 meter. We also then had to identify or send a letter to every individual unit, even though they are not an account holder. That's why that number is so large. The advanced metering infrastructure, this is AMI. The data collection unit poles have been installed. Those have been installed in 8 locations, because we are using one pole that already existed at Achilles Elementary, and they're also using the 3 water towers. Power installation is happening now, and once that is finalized, the company requires pictures of all of this, and then they will send out their team to actually install the data collection units, followed by some test meters, make sure we got our poles all in the right place. So our new estimated rollout is January for meter switch out. E-billing, the final design of the customer portal has been done. This will allow our customers to opt in to receive their bills electronically. They will have a portal where they can go and they can look at their bill month over month over month, and then it will have links to their current online payment options. This rollout is also expected by January. And yes?
With the online payment, is there going to be a surcharge?
It's exactly the same payment as it is now. So, because that is countywide right now. So this e-billing is specific to bills. They did not have a payment option separate. So it is just to receive the bills electronically.
But if they pay it electronically, is there going to be a service charge?
Yes, just like there is now, yes. The sewer line repair at Marius, we did have to call in contractor support. You saw in Ms. Steele's report on Friday, and we pumped out 122,500 gallons throughout Friday night and into Saturday. Well pointing happened yesterday and today. We had hoped that it would only take yesterday. It was very difficult. So they're going to pump the excess water out overnight so that hopefully they can dig tomorrow. So they still have not been able to dig down to actually see where the break occurred yet. So once that happens, then our team will submit the information to DEQ. ARPA projects, just to give you a quick rundown of where we stand with all of these. Pump Station 11 design is mostly complete. Again, this was originally supposed to be funded completely with ARPA dollars, but there were delays between discussions with design, HRSD, VDOT, and our own internal staff. So the design was covered under ARPA dollars. The reverse osmosis skid number 1 membrane replacement is almost done. We are still waiting on one more part, but that cost is inclusive of that part. The Gloucester Point Tower Water Age Management System. This is the system that will allow us to force water in and out of the Gloucester Point Tower, which is at a lower elevation than the others. And so the water in there does not really get used, and so our folks have to drain treated water on a regular basis. So this will prevent that. A slope mower for plant and dam maintenance. The current slope mower, I believe, has an age of 1996 on it. So the purchase order has been issued and they have ordered it, and you have some very, very happy plant staff. SCADA upgrades for the water treatment plant. This purchase order has also been issued. Unfortunately, this is the upgrade before the upgrades. So, you have a computer system that you don't upgrade consistently, and you have to go through a version or 2 of upgrades before. So this will upgrade some of our controls, but will not allow us to fully automate things within the plant yet. A crash truck, fully outfitted and road ready. So this is a 14-foot crash truck with the truck-mounted attenuator on it, rumble strips, cones, barrels. So when needed, the guys will have it at the plant, ready to go. We don't have to rent it. We don't have to beg, borrow.
Can we rent it out to other people?
We could. The difficulty comes in, because I would love to get more revenue, but the difficulty comes in that if you rent it out to someone and then you need it, then what do we do?
I meant locally, because some of the developers here, are doing some of the work around there, and, anything that we can do to provide some income for you guys would be worth it.
Sure, versus them renting it from VDOT. Pump Station 14, control panel, pipes, and pump replacement. That project is out for bid right now. We do have a pre-bid meeting tomorrow, and those bids are due back December 5th. And then the water treatment plant, P3 and P8 replacement, we're still working through specs on that, and I don't believe that we're going to be able to get both of those for that price. But we're still working on it. Yes?
Mr. Chriscoe.
Does this complete our ARPA money that we sent to you?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect.
I want to spend all of that money.
No, that's great. I agree 1,000%. I was making sure we didn't need to look at something else. I was making sure we accounted for it all.
No, I have sort of in the hopper or in my back pocket, if there are any unspent funds. Mr. Wilmot has already approved hydrant replacements, and we know that we're going to need to be replacing those. So if I need to, I can very quickly get those under contract. So up next is pump stations and capacity concerns. This will really just deal with the courthouse area, since it has come up recently multiple times. So first is a map of our pump station service area in the courthouse. So starting from the bottom left clockwise, that's pump station 12 off Belroy Road. Up top, pump station 19 at Food Lion. Across is 22, which is in Gloucestertown Commons right here on Main Street, down to pump station 11 on 14, and then pump station 13, which is behind Main Street Center. This is a map of the HRSD service area. And I tried my hardest to overlay them, and it just would not cooperate. So you get another slide instead. So this is our capacity concern. Going back to our original pump station service area, the red stars note current HRSD service area with capacity concerns, meaning that our pump stations cannot handle growth in an area that is currently considered serviceable by HRSD. This does not mean in those red sections that those people are already on county sewer, just that it is accepted as the HRSD service area. So if I go back to this map, pump station 13 at the bottom right is the only one that connects directly into HRSD out of all of these. The rest of them are considered lift stations, which means they collect and then they lift to another. So pump station 19 up at Food Lion, it lifts to pump station 11. 12 and 22, they lift to pump station 13. Pump station 11 also lifts to pump station 13. So at the end of the day, all of the flow from the courthouse area goes to pump station 13. So what this map was intended to show you is, one, that we have an area identified by HRSD that could be served by county sewer, but we do not have the capacity with our current pump station designs. And two, the yellow star notes what the development district is listed as in the comp plan, which essentially goes up to Craney Creek. That is not in the HRSD service area. So the red star and the triangle is a property that we have had to tell them that they could not develop what they wanted to develop because our pump stations cannot handle the flow. So one thing for the board to consider is, do you want to ask HRSD to expand your service area to potentially include this development district? This does not come with funding. It is simply asking HRSD if they will accept this space into their service area. And if not, then do we change the comp plan and the development district? If the board would like to ask HRSD to expand their service area, there are steps to it. It doesn't seem overly complicated. Again, this does not come with funding. Ultimately, it gets approved by the HRSD Commission. A request is required by letter, board resolution, flow projections, map, along with a verification that the intended use of that property is consistent with zoning. So for example, you're not saying that you're going to put multifamily housing there if that is not appropriately zoned for that. So again, our pump station capacity issues. Pump station 13 is not designed to handle our existing flows. You have probably heard before, pump station 11 and pump station 13 are somewhat of our problem children given their locations. They are prone to flooding. And so when we have a high system demand and we have a weather event, we have issues that usually involve overflow. So pump station 11, when redesigned, as part of that design that is happened already, can handle additional flow from pump station 19, which is that additional development north of the hospital. But it is pump station 13 ultimately that is holding us back. Yes?
I know that HRSD just put a big project, had a big project out to bid in Middlesex.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for that project to get to where it was intended to go, it would have to come through here.
Mm-hmm.
So I would assume all of that would have had to have come through 13 to get to where it needed to go, or not.
It would not have to go through 13. 13 ties into the HRSD force main.
Where were they going to tie into to get Middlesex to?
They have a force main on 14 that we are not tied into.
Well, that's our problem. Thank you. It's not your problem, it's HRSD's problem.
It is my problem. So we did ask to tie Pump Station 11 into the HRSD force main. And they would allow us if we did not expand the design. We could not upgrade the design of Pump Station 11 to anticipate future growth and tie into the existing force main. So in addition to the pump station concerns, the service lines that feed into those pump stations, both 13 and 11, need some serious investigation and potential investment.
What magnitude of investment are you talking about in this chart? Am I add these up in the far right?
No, so what is down there below is simply a snapshot of what was in the 2019 master plan. And just so that you could see that pump stations 11 and 13 and those lines associated with them were identified then as priorities.
But nothing's been done.
Correct. So probable costs for this in today's dollars, pump station 13 of $2.1 million. This would relocate pump station 13 essentially up the hill. So where it is right now, down behind Main Street Center, again, prone to flooding, we would move it up property. So the 1.5 million to construct it, and then line improvements upstream of 600,000. Pump station 11, $2.6 million. This is station floodproofing and construction. Again, the design is almost complete. And then the line improvements of 1.5 million plus. The line improvements for pump station 11 follow essentially back behind here. So everything from Wyncote up to pump station 11, basically. We have not been able to investigate those lines recently to see what shape they are in. And then additional force main improvements for pump station 11 and 13 at 775,000. And that's just the courthouse. This does not take into account any additional sewer line repairs or replacements that are needed for other pump stations.
On the local map, colors tell you where the different parts are.
So the colors on that map actually are different size pipes. So, and you guys can't see this. Yeah. So it's not necessarily indicative of which pump station it goes to, but for the most part, everything that you see, Belroy, so pump station 12, and then where it says G2, G3, those are flowing into pump station 13. And everything at the very top of that map is pump station 11.
Regarding line repair, is that done internally with a machine that's run electronically, that you can look at the lines to see whether they're okay? And you're putting in a little robot in those lines to actually see whether the lines are okay?
We need to. We have some funds right now for pump station 11 and 13 service lines to TV and record what they see. The concern with specifically that one line that essentially goes back behind all of these properties, that easement is about 10 feet and needs some significant clearing. We have the permit from the Army Corps of Engineers in order to do that. We're waiting for things to die back there before we send folks down there. But I am honestly not sure the last time someone was down there to check, and so it's possible that even sending a camera down and through there may not be sufficient.
Mr. Bazzani.
So how do you intend to pay for this? With debt or FMRR or?
I don't have a plan. That is part of the direction that I need tonight.
Well, how would we know? I mean, you guys are closer to it than we are. There's just 7 of us here that don't know crap about what's going on in the utilities department.
Well, there's
So-
more.
There's more debt.
There's more.
More to come.
There's more.
There's more upstream coming downstream.
Thank you.
There's
We
more.
don't have a paddle.
And I used the word crap, I'm sorry.
Just finished.
I want to say one thing about, so the lines you showed you that was from the G1, you can go back to the one before this. The one that shows G1 all the way back through the woods, the one at the top, that's been a line that's been identified for a while in one of our studies that needs to be replaced. But it is the one that runs through the swamp, through the marsh, and that's really limiting any growth up here. So whether it was Holly Springs that had to be hooked up or anything else that's in that whole sewage collection area, including 19. That's a big deal because it's an existing line that runs through a pretty tough part of the county. It's down low where it was built, and we'd have to go through. It hadn't been cleared in over 40 years. That line's where she shows you up there for Pump Station 11, the 1.5 millions, because we've got to go and literally replace it, a 10-inch pipe or an 8-inch pipe with a 20-inch, a 16. We got to really up the size to take any flow that's coming upstream of it. And it's just, it's never been done. We haven't even inspected it, and that's what she's really worried about. We get down there, it could be full of gravel, it could have, you know, areas that have had infiltration. We don't know what we're going to find when we get down there. So she's got to kind of tell you what we think conservative number is to get this done.
So there's more. An update on the water treatment plant and where we stand with DEQ. So current water treatment plant projects, the RO skid you've seen, that's funded with ARPA. Tree removal at the dam, I have brought that up before. That is a compliance issue as part of our dam operations and maintenance certificate, which was recently renewed for another conditional 2 years. The outfall connectors and spillway modifications, I'll get into that in a little bit. That is also a compliance issue. Some pump and feed replacements that are much needed. HVAC replacement in the reverse osmosis plant as well as in the lab. Those were not planned expenses. The filter number 1 crack and media replacement. We have done an initial design work and inspection. Actual work that needs to happen is estimated to be $1 million. Additional SCADA and instrumentation upgrades. That 565 is the 450,000 from ARPA plus 115,000 that was already in the capital budget for this year. That shortfall could be 200,000 plus. As part of the ARPA funded project, they will be providing us an assessment of what else is needed in order for us to begin to automate more of our systems. And then replacing the motor control center. This was also funded in the capital budget. This operates all of our pumps, and it is currently housed in the pipe and pump room of the water treatment plant, which can be prone to flooding, and electricity and water do not mix. It is also ancient. It looks like something out of Apollo 13. That's all I think of when I look at it. So where we are with our DEQ permitting issues. So our VIPDES permit, this is a 5-year permit. This is the permit that allows the county to discharge wastewater that is part of a treatment process, not to be confused with sewage waste treatment, because we don't do that. This is simply the water that we don't use that is sent, that is part of the treatment process. So it is about clean water in the environment, not drinking water. The Virginia Department of Health regulates our drinking water, and all of those requirements have been met. So our current permit expires November 30th of this year. It has been administratively continued as we are still working through violations and potential enforcement. The permit renewal was submitted on time in June. And again, we're still working with DEQ on what that permit will look like moving forward. So a recap of the DEQ issues. We did receive a notice of violation in May of '24. We met virtually and in person with DEQ, and After the in-person meeting, we thought we had a plan, and I believe that's when I spoke to you the next time. So staff sent a draft action plan. The action plan is supposed to be the schedule of compliance and how we are going to fully comply with the permit limits as a final solution. We have yet to see a draft consent order from DEQ. So our first draft action plan went to them October 7th, and it proposed a new sampling location, still within our property boundaries, which was actually a suggestion by DEQ at one of our meetings. So we immediately started taking samples from that location, as well as what we are required to take from given our current permit. The new test results from the proposed location were fantastic. And then also as part of the draft action plan was to implement the closure of well number 2, which we have not used in 4 years, and abandon these other outfalls that are associated with that. And that is where those outfall connector pipes come in. And then also by December of 26, install some flow data measurements at the spillway, make some repairs. We felt really good with this draft action plan. DEQ sat on it for a little while and then asked to meet with us on site October 29th. We thought to look at the new proposed sampling location. Instead, they denied our proposed sampling location and said that the property boundary could not be used because this water is not an intermittent stream, it's a reservoir.
I thought they approved the sampling location.
No, it was a suggestion from them, and
now they've said no?
correct.
Because they don't know what they want till they see it, right?
They don't even know that.
Question,
Yes.
question. Has DEQ imposed any fine on our violation?
Not that I have received.
Okay, but they could.
It is likely.
Okay.
So at that meeting, one of the takeaways from that was that I needed that denial in writing because my last directive from you all was, let's wait and see what DEQ says. So now they have said that new sample location is not correct.
In writing?
In writing, yes. And which pretty much means we are starting over with our next plan. So there's still no agreed upon solution. From that October 29th meeting, staff were pretty much under the impression that the only way still that we will continue to meet or finally meet the permit limitations will be to stop use of the RO plant or potentially some other capital investment.
So what is the holistic issue here? So we're dumping water into a known body like the reservoir, right? And so what is their concern? Their concern is that it's gonna go into the Chesapeake Bay? This water's already clean basically as it goes into the dam, right? As it goes into the, so what is their concern?
Over the dam.
So their concern is the limits of chlorides that are being discharged, and it is about the clean water. So it's chlorides.
Clean water from us? Clean water to the public?
It's about clean water in the environment. So again, not drinking water.
So the chicken farmers and all those guys that use fertilizer and those things drain into the water, so that doesn't count, but the minuscule water that you can actually drink before you dump it into the creek, that's what their concern is?
Yeah.
Show the picture you have on
Yeah, the next.
I'm not impugning you, I'm just saying how
it-
ridiculous they're getting here with this whole situation.
I don't disagree in some respects, as I've been dealing with this ad nauseum for the last several months. So,
Can you drink the water that you're dumping out?
I mean,
You can?
I wouldn't.
So this water isn't part of our drinking water process at all.
Right.
This is when you go through
This is
these
just the
filters
waste.
and you get the water becomes less salty as it goes through the filter. So the water that we don't use gets saltier. The chlorides go up. So this is just a discharge of high chloride well water back into the environment. We're not doing anything with it with chemicals that we're adding. This is the water that would go through the plant and come out, and instead of being 1,500 in chlorides, it's 5,000.
But the
And
Chesapeake
that's
Bay is
above the
already
limit.
salted water.
They
What
tell
difference
us-
does it make?
They said we could put it down here by the bowling alley, but we would have to run a
We would have to
pipe
run the pipe.
to the bowling alley because that is brackish water. That's several $1 million to run a pipe we'd have to maintain again through the swamps. Katie's done a fantastic job, but it's like trying to hit a target as they move it because they're not giving us clear direction yet. They just keep saying we can't pollute the environment. They don't see a way that we won't doing what we're doing,
So-
no matter what we give them.
So Counselor, is this overzealous inspection, overzealous oversight?
Perhaps, but they're the boss. We're not the boss. So if the state tells us we have to do A, we do A. Perhaps we should have used all of our ARPA funds to come into compliance. Apparently, the previous director was not, he was short-sighted. He was not informative, and he didn't tell the Board of Supervisors what you all need to do to come into compliance. We've had notice of our compliance issues for 4 or 5 years. We've known we've not been in compliance. We should come into compliance, period. It's not difficult.
But
We should have done it 5 years ago.
But holistically, what we're doing is putting chlorinated water into water that's already salinated by the sea. So are we adding to the salination of the Chesapeake Bay by doing this?
If I were in control, we would be in compliance,
But there's,
but we're not.
Mr. Bazzani, I think
hopefully
this-
the new administration and the EPA will stop all this crap.
To think with Governor Youngkin and President Trump, you would think that we would have inroads into some ears who would be sympathetic.
I say we bide our time until such time the EPA gets changed and the bureaucrats are changed out, and the EPA changes their attitude about environmental issues.
But this is a DEQ issue. It has,
By EPA.
right? I mean, it has nothing to do with the upper level things at EPA, correct? This is,
It starts at EPA.
Yeah, so there you
EPA has
go.
the national permit and then is delegated to the states.
but I mean, the other outfall area, just at the edge of our property, what was the problem why they wouldn't take that where the levels of chloride were much, much lower? Why wouldn't they take that?
So there are two issues. One, the property boundary, because we are not dealing with an intermittent stream, and I have to say that slow or else I'm going to mess it up. So we're not dealing with a creek or a river that has different flows. We're dealing with the reservoir and the spillway. The second piece of that is that according to DEQ, they have already our permit limits are already based on what they believe is accurate dilution. So if we are taking samples further down the line, then we are doubly diluting it, and that does not count in the permit limits.
What about the dilution factor when you were saying earlier we had 1 million gallons, but it's really 4 million, and you showed them the graphic that was clear that at some point we were doing even more than 4 million?
Yes.
So where did that-
They don't like our information. They have their own calculation system. They have shared it with our consulting engineer. And we have found that some of the numbers are off in that.
calculation? In their calculation?
No, it started with us in that the sample limits or the sample results that were sent were switched. So for example, outfall 2 was reported as outfall 1 and vice versa. And that only happened a couple of times. Bottom line, that might change our limit, but not substantially.
One thing we should point out is that we chose outfall 1 as the measuring point. County did, right?
Yes,
Okay, well, they're measuring it from where we chose.
correct.
Because they didn't want to go through the swamp.
Because we were not foresighted enough to choose a different outfall.
So what if we,
So,
what if we choose a different outfill now?
so that,
We're trying
I'm-
to do that, but they've said no.
so, that leads me to my next slide.
How old are these DEQ folks that are coming down to visit us?
I'm sorry?
Are they straight out of college, or are they just young engineers that want to make a name for themselves at DEQ?
No, they've been there, have probably moved up through the ranks. You know, I don't know.
You met them.
Well, I do, but
Were they new?
don't ask me their
Would they
age.
look like they're in their
Sarah,
20s?
that's terrible.
Do they look like they're in their 20s and 30s?
I am a terrible judge of age, and I will never answer that in a public forum.
The people we started this whole process with when Mr. Dawson was here have all left DEQ. So the group we're working with, no matter what their age are, they're a new team to us. So we're trying to get to understand them and what their requirements are.
Maybe we ought to present our problem to the governor.
It also might be that we've got delegates that are, representing the district that, I mean, this seems like pretty heavy-handed.
It is.
That is not necessary.
Right.
And we're doing everything we can to
jump their
meet the
hoops.
standards. It would seem that there would be no reason in my mind to approach Delegate Green and Hodges and even Whitman to support the issues that we have, that we were trying to meet these needs and put a little pressure on them rather than pressure us. I mean, we're just this little dinky place, and we're not the big guys, and they feel they can just punch us around, pick on us.
So what is
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Hodges doing about this?
Can I address just, I was going to interrupt for a moment, it goes right to that point. As the staff discussed options, one of the options is to look at legislatively. Because if things change legislatively, that's a completely different situation. What I would suggest is I think we're all sort of like jump here, jump there, trying to fix the problem. I think I would allow Ms. Legg to continue, and then as you get to these deciding points where she's asking for direction on, part of that's going to be on financing, part of that's going to be on growth or no growth, and part of that's going to be on how much do you want to push this issue. And I think that it's also, I wanted to point out earlier when I was trying to jump in, is understanding that this spillway and everything is on the other side of the dam. So this is, the reason that it's an environmental issue is you're looking at water that goes on down and it's past the dam and it's, water's coming over the overflow. It's not brackish water, it's not a river, and so there are environmental issues. We've commented, we don't know of any dead trees or other problems. So we're aware of this sort of feeling like we're under attack too. And I think legislative may be something that you all want to consider, but the timing of all this is going to be very important too.
I mean, what we are dealing with is our own little creek that's coming from the...
It goes off of our property though,
Right.
and that's the issue, I think, as much as anything. I mean, it's like, where is everything eventually going? And on our property, we know from these additional tests that it's fine. The results are great, and they're going to be great beyond our property. But they're not accepting, as, it's been stated.
So they're saying,
it's kind of like,
I certainly
it's over the
understand.
dam, right? It's,
but,
I know Ted's got some kind of joke on that.
From my perspective, knowing and understanding chloride, you would think that if we're looking at the chloride levels along there, everything along that path should be dead, right? Mm-hmm. Is it dead? It's probably, is it dead? No. So these plants are doing well. So to me, there's justification for supporting, the fact that we're not killing things, that, these plants are able to adapt and survive, and by the time they get to their appropriate place, I mean, nothing's dying from it. I would think, salt is bad, period. And that's why, most animals and plants live within an envelope of certain salinity levels. But you've got plants there that are doing well. They've adapted and they're doing well. I would think, and again, this is a tough one because DEQ's probably not going to look at the plants. They're looking at numbers, just absolute numbers, which is unfair. And I think then, again, as much as I understand and approve of things that help the environment, in this issue, I really do think we have a leg to stand on, but that leg really needs some support from perhaps our delegates and whatever.
Mr. Nicosia.
So Ms. Steele answered about half of the question I had. Now, so I'm gonna ask you the other half. What is the landing point for this water? What she said it's on the other side of the dam, but it's somebody who's trying to learn. What is the landing point for this? Where does this water go?
So, the Beaver Dam Swamp. So if you look at this slide, this is actually a picture of the dam and the water treatment plant on the left. You can see at the very bottom right, Beaver Dam Swamp. So the dam has, right here, sorry, at the top right, I need to start using my directions. At the top right is our spillway, and so water is, from the reservoir is, oh. I was like, we're done, folks.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, sure. Keep it.
Out, we're done.
So water is coming over that spillway down to where that red box and right below that is an 18-foot pipe. That water is coming down here.
And where does Beaver Dam go? Where does Beaver Swamp go? Where does it drain to? Chesapeake Bay?
Well, I mean, I guess
The Ware River.
technically,
Chesapeake Bay. So the concern is we're adding too much salt to the already salty Chesapeake Bay? That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, it seems like it's overzealous oversight.
Where are we currently collecting it?
Okay.
Which
Yep.
X?
So the green X is where we currently sample from. This is outfall 001. This is a pipe that is coming from the water treatment plant, and that is where we sample from. So our first proposal was to go to the blue X, which is before it leaves our property. Again, that request was denied. So what DEQ has said is that you can sample from a man-made ditch before it intermingles with the incoming stream. So there is a ditch which lets out at that red X. So the discharge comes from where you see the green X, it goes down and there to the red X. We could sample from there before it empties.
Can we sample?
So I had a discussion with DEQ yesterday or Friday, I don't remember, and their initial reaction was, as long as everyone understands this is a man-made ditch and you have to sample before it mingles with the stream, which we understand. So we have to put that request in writing, and then see what happens from there. So we have not sampled from that.
I got you. You're doing all you can do. I mean, commendable, right? But they said we can sample from the red X. They said initially we could sample from the red X.
They are saying that if that is a man-made ditch, now, they have not put eyes on it. We have sent them pictures.
And have they responded in writing?
No, I have not made the
I
official
wouldn't do a
request.
thing until they respond in writing.
And I have not made the official request in writing yet either. Because we have a couple of different issues here. One, we're trying to work through the current permit and the violations that exist under the current permit. We're also trying to work through drafting the new permit. So, and it gets extra confusing because trying to figure out what needs to happen right now versus what happens with the new permit. So what we're trying to do is get this new sample location to be part of the new permit.
Have you done a pre-sample just before you write the letter to ask? Have you sampled that location, make sure it's clean, and then ask them, hey, can we sample here first?
We have taken a sample. I don't know that it's going to solve our problem. I don't believe that it's going to get us.
What was the result of the sample? Was the sample acceptable in your view?
It is better than what is coming out of outfall 001, which is the current location.
Is it below the limits into which we got the violation notice?
No.
It is not.
If, I'll ask this later. No, I'm not gonna ask it.
I would say, you were asking a lot of good questions, and we've had all these internally and with our consultant, but to let Katie kind of finish up, because this is a pretty complicated, but it ties into other things we've got to do at the plant. So we just know that this permit is holding up some of the things we can do with the RO side, but we've got other issues there that we need to kind of correct. So I think you've asked a lot of good questions, but we're at the point where we don't have a good answer for you. We're negotiating with VIPDs all the time, with DEQ. We've brought Mr. Wilmot in multiple times to ask him questions or have him look at some of the stuff. He's been kind enough to tell me that, as he said, may not have had the foresight that what we signed initially may not have been exactly what we should have, but once we signed it, we were obligated to meet it. And we're there. We're trying to figure out the solution to this.
When was this originally signed?
At least 5 years ago, because
You mean
that
this,
was,
this permit? This permit was originally issued in 2019.
And how long have we been sampling at 1001?
since we had an RO plan.
Yeah,
But
so
these new
15, 20
requirements
years.
didn't come in on these limits until, in our permit required us to be, I think it was December of '23, and then we had to 24 to make the, it was 23, so this year we're in violation.
But these are grandfathering limits. You said they're newly imposed limits after we've accepted under the old?
Right, so when
Why aren't we grandfathered in the old?
when your
the old
permit
method?
is issued every 5 years, those limits change. So for example, the permit that they are drafting right now for our renewal, they have said our limits may change again and may go down,
Yeah, even harder.
which makes it even harder.
But what's the rationale for doing that? Subjective rectal extraction, what?
They're saving the environment.
I'm sure, okay.
But I understood you to say earlier that we can discharge it into the Ware River directly.
Because it's brackish there, our chlorides would be the same as what's in the water. Right now, this is,
If we discharge here long enough, it's gonna be just as brackish here as it is there.
we've been discharging here since the plant's been open, and we haven't hurt any of the,
Then there you go.
any of the minnows, any of the water
We have
fleas.
proven DEQ wrong, because they can change it every 5 years if they want. We haven't changed it in 20 years, so we must be doing something right.
Yeah. But as this is only one of the things she needs to tell y'all, we ought to just move on to the next thing.
So not to beat this one, we have developed a draft action plan number 2. This has not been shared with DEQ because this does call for some significant capital investment that I cannot authorize. And this plan was based on our last meeting with DEQ, in that we feel, or felt at the time, that there was no other option. So
you're saying this is going to present an undue financial burden on the county to meet these new specifications that they've come up with?
it is a significant capital.
Then we need counsel. We need to get our delegates involved and get the governor involved here, because this is getting a little ridiculous.
And I don't disagree, but they're not new. We've known about this for 4 or 5 years.
Okay, so it's new, but
We
okay, so
chose the
we
outfall
dropped the ball.
measuring
So
point.
we dropped the ball. So now we need to fix it.
We need to come in compliance. But failing that, perhaps the county would be best served if ever, we get some kind of a compliance plan from DEQ, which apparently they don't want to give us. But if they ever do, then yes, you should perhaps hire Aqualaw or some firm eminently qualified in fighting the DEQ. My personal heartburn is we agreed to this. We should do it. When 5 years ago, the county knew that these were the compliance levels, and we've known we're not only 2% over, we're what, 500% over? Yeah. Okay, well, we chose the outfall, which fix it.
So did her predecessor drop the ball on this?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
And the predecessor county administrator.
Okay.
Should this, I mean, it's already up, but should this be displayed? If this is a draft?
Right now, it's talking points.
Okay.
There has not been any enforcement document received from DEQ. If they get to that, they have said that they expect the county to start providing what these options are. They don't want to tell us how to do it, just that we must.
See, that's the problem. They don't know until they see it, and then they might not like it when they see it. That's the risk we're taking here. We may spend millions of dollars trying to come in compliance, and they will say, nah, that's not quite right. I think you need to do something else, because they don't know what they want.
Well, I think ideally, if I may, the vision is that we'll fashion a consent order which will detail the county's obligations. And if the county agrees to whatever that consent order indicates, and if DEQ agrees, then it's a contract. Then both parties would be bound by the sufficiency of those mutual acceptances and obligations. We're waiting for that consent order. What DEQ has done, I spoke with the attorney for DEQ about, 6 weeks ago, maybe?
Yeah,
and I thought in a couple weeks we would get a consent order. He directed me to the website, which has a template for the boilerplate language of a consent order. And I told him in no uncertain terms, I don't piecemeal things. I do everything all at once, so I have all the pieces to the puzzle before I put it together. I don't need to see a template. What I need to see is the whole picture. And so when and if I get the whole picture, I can look at it all at once. And I thought he was going to get the county a draft consent order within a couple weeks. Well, that's been 6 weeks, 2 months ago.
2 months.
Yes. And I still haven't seen it, so I don't know whether we're ever going to get one. So the problem with that is my expectations are unrealistic because I want reality, and I'm not getting reality. What I'm getting is bureaucrat speak. And so we continue to be not in compliance, which frustrates me equally. It's like, no, if the permit says you do A, then you do A. That's what you do. We're not doing that. So I'm getting frustrated from the county side because we're not doing what we have to do. And I'm getting frustrated from the state side because they're not giving us what we need to do to satisfy them. So I think you're right, Mr. Bazzani. I think we need to perhaps pull into our corner, potentially our delegate and our senators, our representatives, and perhaps any pull or influence we have at the federal level. But I'm waiting to hear what DEQ wants to be satisfied. But in the meantime, I think perhaps the best thing to do is for us to come up with, and I think that's what Katie's trying to do with her red X's and her green X's and her blue X's. How can we maybe come closer to compliance and then tell them, okay, we might be able to do this. But whatever we do that's going to satisfy them is probably to the tune of $500,000 to $3 or $4 million.
So this action plan, what DEQ has stated to us is that the consent order usually is boilerplate, and that the action plan is an addendum to it, and that is the schedule of compliance. And in that schedule of compliance discusses interim options, but also needs to detail what your final solution is. And so, again, this is simply a draft of talking points based on the meeting that we had at the end of October.
I have to go back to what Dr. Orth said. We haven't killed any plants. No trees have fell. None of the ecosystem has been damaged or affected by all this. So isn't that a good argument to go back and say, what have we harmed? What have we hurt here? What are you guys doing to us that's not really hurting the environment? All the oysters and the toads and the three-eyed frogs are still living. So what are we doing to the environment because we're dumping cleaner water than what's going into the Chesapeake Bay? What's the harm and what's the impact?
They are basing everything off of their calculations of a modeling program.
Yeah, a modeling
That's-
program that's probably developed in Midwest, right? No, truly, that's where they get their modeling from some of the research universities in the Midwest that have nothing to do, they have not been down to the Chesapeake Bay to see what's going on with water effluent and water drainage. I'm not a scientist.
Yeah, I think we need to be very careful in implicating individuals that we know nothing about and where the models come from. So I think just cautious.
No, I'm just saying,
Yeah,
I'm
but
just being facetious because, you know, we need to fight back.
But the problem is sometimes facetious, they're gonna take it as,
Well, we wouldn't respond that way, we would just.
I know, but there's been other times that people have watched meetings and have heard what has been said.
This is a public meeting that's
And that's-
recorded, and anybody could be
And that's
reading
why I
and
said I
listening to
didn't know
this.
if this should even be presented.
And,
Yeah, we should
and I
discuss
think
this
that
tonight.
Ms. Legg has got, additional information, again, I think that she needs to cover. It's not just looking at the action steps that may get us closer or help, but there are other issues, water treatment plant, regardless of the Viptes situation.
Yeah, the bottom line is, we've all been on this board for these past 5 years, and this issue has not come up once. And even with my attendance at the utility meetings, we've never heard of one issue related to being non-compliant in any of this. And so, yeah, this is the result of individuals that fail to make us aware of the problem that has been occurring, as Mr. Wilmot has indicated, for the last 5 years.
So, again, this plan, talking points based on the meeting that we left at the end of October, which includes some potential significant capital investment. So I've mentioned a change in the sampling, outfall, the outfall connectors, which need to happen regardless so that we can have well number 2 and outfalls 2 and 3 removed from the permit going forward. So those need to happen anyway. New to this is completing a rate study for a 10-year window, which includes capital needs to consider plant expansion, groundwater injection program, and/or operational changes to meet permit limits. Complete design and construction of a 1 million gallon storage tank at the water treatment plant, and then complete the final solution identified in number 4. Again, draft, talking points. So this is a very generic graphic of what the existing plant looks like. So this presents some challenges to us when we start talking about repairs that are needed at the plant. So specifically, you've heard me mention before, repairs to filter number 1. There is a crack in that filter. That filter abuts clarifier number 1. The clarifiers cannot be isolated. So in order to drain or fix this filter crack, we would not only have to drain it, but we would also have to remove all of the media that's in it. So all of the things that actually filter the water. That needs to be replaced anyway. That media has gone well past its useful life. That is $1 million project. But in order to do that, there has to be a backup system in place, which is where the 1 million gallon ground tank comes in. That could be built on site, and that would allow the water treatment plant to have an additional storage capacity. Right now, the water treatment plant, its storage capacity is that 140,000 gallon clear well. The clear well is the last piece before that water goes into the distribution system. And the stress on the system, because we have to keep that clear well filled as we're pushing out into the system in order to meet our contact time requirements for chlorine. So we are treating and distributing at the same time, all the time. So there is no storage beyond that at the water treatment plant.
Let me just make sure we're clear on this, because I know I missed the utilities meeting, but the bottom line is that we have to continue to serve customers with adequate, clean water, regardless of what's going on in the treatment plant. You know,
Correct.
that no one knows, but it's our responsibility, regardless of what goes on here, that every customer, 5,200 customers, businesses and homes, have to be provided with adequate, clean water throughout the process.
Correct. And some of the things that we have, again, for example, the Gloucester Point Tower system that we're working on, is we're making improvements to our overall system so that we're not wasting. You know, having the storage capacity in the towers helps, but between the tower at Page and the courthouse and the Point Tower, it's 1.5 million gallons. We're distributing out into our system on average, so far in 2024, 1.3 million gallons a day. So if our surface water plant is offline, then we have 1 day's worth of water. And running the RO plant doesn't mean anything because the water from the RO plant comes in through the surface water plant. Everything goes into that clear well before it is discharged out into the system.
So, question. So we have 2 water towers.
3.
3 water towers. So 3 water towers. Do we manage those water towers so that we use up the water and then refill to alleviate the burden on this plant?
No, so it's all based on system pressure. Again, this goes back to the Gloucester Point Tower. The elevation of that tower is lower than the other 2 towers. So the water that gets into that tower just sits there, and then it becomes undrinkable. And so...
Is it used by the public? I mean, is it drained?
No, it's
What
not.
are we filling it for then?
For fire flow, emergency, if we need it.
Okay.
So
Ms. Like, do you know the date of that tower by any chance? I was just, you know, the reason it's lower is because it's older.
I don't, not off the top of my head.
Because that's part of the old system, I believe.
Yes.
And if we were building a new tower, we would not build one at that height. And part of your plan that you've had is to build another tower higher up. We also had discussed last year about a tower at the plant too. So this is all, you know, you want water as backup and you want to be able to handle new customers too.
So taking into account all of those things at the water treatment plant, including DEQ. Some considerations for compliance and plant redundancy. Immediate are the outfall connector pipes and spillway improvements. This is currently budgeted, $471,000. I believe that is sufficient. We actually have that in design. Short term, not budgeted, could be a rate study at $120,000. The 1 million gallon ground storage at $2.2 million. Filter and media repairs and replacement at $1 million. And the raw water pump, which is new, at $560,000. So just as an FYI, if I go back to this slide, the raw water intake currently has 3 pumps, but there is a space for a 4th. So if we are considering additional storage, plant expansion, adding that 4th pump would be important. And then long-term, not budgeted, RO plant injection design. So this is essentially injecting groundwater into our discharge, basically, injecting it into the ground, into a well that we are building at a cost of $2 million. This would be an option if we are saying we want to just continue on as we always have. We want to continue to use the RO plant. It's 50% water supply. That's what that investment would be. I would not recommend doing that if we are looking at a plant expansion, which right now is an estimated cost of $17 million. That expansion essentially duplicates what is there at the surface water plant, so that one section could be taken offline while another is operating and, you know, could be repaired, maintained.
Mr. Bazzani.
So have you seen their modeling program? Have you seen it? Have you looked at it?
I haven't seen the program.
To let our engineers look at it?
We had a consulting engineer who has been helping us with these permit issues for several years. And
Have they looked at it?
he's looked at their calculations, which he has told them do not match our own. But again, we're looking at what the actual flow data is over the spillway, and they are looking at just their calculations and however that model is designed.
Dr. Ms. Steele.
The items that Ms. Legg just went over, for the most part, have nothing to do with DEQ. We have a plant that's old, that we haven't done major work on it at all. We build things sometimes and we just think they're gonna stay forever. The redundancy that was thought of with previous engineers and things was going with the RO, and that's great. And thank goodness, that we have it, because we have this mix of surface water and well water, but that's not enough. And we know of horrible stories that can happen in other communities where they have no water. And so I would suggest that these items need to be, we've addressed well before DEQ the need for more storage. And whether it's a plant expansion or how that goes into, and whether you want to keep up with the RO plant, these things they're not necessarily directly having to deal with the outfall. But you have a system that's old. The system, I don't know how old the pipes were at Marius. Maybe they weren't old, because we know that was a newer part of the system added. But we have constantly things that are breaking. And I think that as she's going to move into this sort of next phase, talking about where do you go and how do you want the system to operate, I have a little bit of personal heartburn with the fee study at this point. Just thinking about spending $120,000, because I don't know. It could say you can do this, you need to do this, but it's like our tax rates, right? Everybody wants, low tax rates, even though we have a lot of things that need to be fixed. So my concern is that once we get closer to this, before we would ever release in the RFP, is we would have studied this a little bit more, because I think that what the board may be looking at is whether subsidization from the county budget is what's needed. Because again, I'm not on any water or sewer. I've never, been on it, but I can tell you whether it's the schools that my kids have gone to, the Walmart I've shopped in, et cetera, the community would not have become what we are today without having public water and sewer. So I'm not saying that it has to happen that way, because then that just makes our operating budget even worse and our debt capacity worse. But I think that this is hard to absorb, but it's the reality that we have old stuff and we don't have that many customers, and I don't know how much we can charge people to come up with, even if we're borrowing it over 30 years to get to $17 or $20 million worth of items.
We have a good idea what it's going to cost us.
Yeah. Hey, Katie, let me just go back on the calculation. So we produce, you said 1.5 million gallons of water a day, and we use 1.3 million gallons a day, correct?
On average, we are pushing out 1.3.
0.3.
Yes.
Okay. What's the storage capacity of the two of the water towers? The third you said is the one at the point that we don't use 250,000 gallons of processed water.
So courthouse is also 250, and then the Page is 1 million.
Okay. So, but where does the other, so that's 1.25, but you push out 1.3, where's that 50,000?
The lines.
It's in the lines? Okay. But you're now suggesting that we, in your plan, have a capacity of another 1 million, just in case, because if we have something happen to the plant where it shuts down, we do have enough for people to have for one day.
If the reserves were built out right now,
Well, that's what
where would the water be coming from for that? Yes, you'd be
that's
making
kind
a
of the direction I was
24-hour
taking, is that,
operation, but
the capacity is where we have, people getting water today, but if you looked at the projections that we were thinking about for the utilities for the reserve, that came online, and Down the future, it's going to be a lot. So, yeah, in 10 years, if it was fully built out, we don't have the capacity today to provide those customers with adequate water.
Right.
And Dr. Orth, one of the things that Katie had mentioned earlier is that people are having demand all day long. So when we start up our plant, they watch those water towers, and as people draw water down, they're filling them back up. So it isn't like we fill them up at night and they go down during the day and we fill them back up. Our plant tries to mimic whatever the water level is to keep it there. So if there's a higher demand, they're trying to produce faster. If it's a lower demand, they slow it down. So they're trying to manage the plant because we have no other way to store water on site. If they have 1 million gallons on site, they can run it at a certain speed all day long, fill the tank up, and then use that tank to make the adjustments out in the field. But they literally have to watch those tanks all day long to make them, they're back full by the time we shut down at night.
Well, that goes back to my question about managing the tanks. You are managing the tanks.
Yes, sir. We are. I mean, it's up on a big SCADA screen all day long. So you go down there and talk to the operators, they know where those tank levels are.
Okay.
I'm not done.
You had 30 minutes.
And I think my clicker died.
She didn't account for the 25 minutes worth of questions.
Did you do that or did I do that? Okay. Okay. So next up is where we are with the FY25 budget. Oh, I got it. Okay. So snapshot, broken down by personnel, operating, debt service, and capital projects. Personnel is just over 25%. Only because we have had staff retire and so there have been payouts. There are currently 5 open positions in utilities. So I expect that percentage to start to decrease, compared to where we are in the year. Operating is, repairs, chemicals, lab supplies. There are some payments there that are one-time payments each year, and those are done up front in the beginning of the fiscal year. Debt service, exactly what it sounds like. Some of those payments come due in October, some come due in April. And then capital projects. This does also include AMI. Some projects on this list are already complete because they were carry forwards from FY24. They just did not complete before June 30th. Others are in design phase or have not started. Revenue. I have a separate slide on application and development fees, but you can see that as of yesterday, we have collected 2% of that projected revenue. Our build usage charges are on track. This is fees for service, water, sewer, hydrant. This includes the equipment fee. Interest and fees are on track. And other fees are things like insurance recovery, payments to us if we have had to go out and make repairs that are not on us, things like that. Return check fees. So currently our entire total revenue collection is at 28%.
As of this fiscal year?
Correct. So specific to application and development fees. So you had been presented with a long-term plan probably over a year ago that anticipated 172 new homes being added to our system each year. And by the time the budget was adopted, we had reduced that to 86 new homes, thinking that the reserves was getting a slow start. Obviously, we have not realized any of that at this time.
You've not seen the 86 homes?
Correct. So the reserves has not been under construction at all. So what that means is that the application fees, which go to grow our fund balance, are not there. And the development fees that go towards growing the development fund, which helps us expand the system, also are not there. I will say that our sewer charges, that revenue is up 4% this same time last year, and our water revenue is up 2%. I think some of that is timing with the new disconnect procedures, giving folks actually a little bit more time to pay and not having to go through the disconnect process, I think has actually worked pretty well for collecting fees. So fund balance. This gives you a breakdown of what the unrestricted fund balance and the development fund look like. At the end of 2024, the unrestricted fund balance was $1.64 million, and the development fund was $1.86. The use of fund balance currently budgeted in FY25 is $1.7 million for a shortfall of $62,000. And this is mostly due to the fact that we have carried forward projects. So we started just getting projects done. And then the use of development fund is $560,000. With the application fee revenue shortfall of at least, assumed to be at least $585,000, if not more, and the no increase in development fund, we're going to have to look at delaying capital projects. One thing to consider is that there is no policy for the utilities fund balance. The county has a policy for its own fund balance, and it may be worth considering implementing a fund balance policy for utilities. It is industry standard or best practice to at least have 120 days of operating expenses in the fund balance. Things like that could go to support those unplanned repairs, such as Marius.
Where are we now?
This is where we currently are budgeted right now. If I were to spend every bit that was budgeted, our fund balance would be in the hole, and it would have to pull from somewhere else.
Where would 120 days be?
Oh, what would that number be?
That's what I was asking.
Sorry, I don't know. I should have had that number, but I'll get it to you.
A lot.
Yeah.
More than $62,000 in the hole.
Mr. Chair, so is it the right idea to stop any kind of development in this county that would stress our utility system? To stop it until we can recover? I mean, can we stop development until we can recover this issue that we have of being able to supply customers with water and sewage services? I mean,
Well,
something's got to stop. You know, we can't continue to grow and continue to have problems.
so that, I mean, that is something that the board needs to consider and that we're going to need direction on. You know, the development fund is meant to expand the system. You know, with a balance of $1.3 million, that's not going to do a whole lot of anything. Not to mention all of the repairs and maintenance that are needed for the aging infrastructure. I think that's a much larger philosophical question than I can answer.
And in the past, I believe that the attitude has been the growth is what you needed to help offset. The more people who are connected, the more people who are paying fees. The fact here that we're talking about these homes that didn't get built that were budgeted, you know, rightfully so, has put us in a bind. It's not the use of the water. They might have to run the plant more often. We need to fill these open positions, and hopefully that'll help. But you've got old things that need to be fixed, which is a separate matter. And then you've got, you know, how much does expansion help or not? And it's not only, as Katie's preparing, or as Ms. Legg is preparing her FY26 operating budget, the question is, are these homes ever going to get built? You know, or are other homes going to get built? And so there's always some projection and some guessing, and we know how many new customers have been hooked up annually. I mean, that's something, you look at your historical data, but we were facing a little bit different situation. I mean, even Main Street Landing, I mean, that was a whole lot of new customers. So, you know, that's why you've got some development fees and things because of, and I'm not advocating growth, but I think it's a balancing act. If you don't grow, then all the old stuff that you have that you can't afford to fix is going to be even a worse of a situation.
But one of the other points here is that for 10 years, we haven't raised our rates. You know, we talk about HRSDs raise their rates every year. We haven't. So along with the other things we've done, we haven't been able to increase the amount of funding we've had to do some of these repairs and things. We did do a rate study back in 2013, and that's one reason we're talking about it again is part of this is how do you finance it? Is it with stepping up the rates with the customers we have along with some long-range financing? And we haven't done that in 10 years. It's really put her in a kind of a fix because we didn't have a backup plan. We just kind of kept using what we had and deferring the maintenance.
So this is a list of projects that can be delayed, so the additional SCADA improvements, this would be over and above the ARPA funds, some of the design work and construction work that has not begun on some of these various projects. Some may just be delayed until closer towards the end of the fiscal year when we have a much better projection of what our revenue is going to look like. But any of these that are delayed, that helps our bottom line in that fund balance will not be used for these capital projects, but may go to support operating instead. I'm almost done.
You're doing good.
So I'm going to just remind you of the existing 5-year plan. You saw the 10-year plan a few times over the last year or so. I've just chopped out the first 5 years and what some potential modifications look like, and then some items for you to consider. So this is a snapshot of the capital projects that were proposed to use operating revenue and a combination of fund balance, of unrestricted fund balance. So those items in that orange-yellow color are carry forwards from FY23 and FY24, projects that had been funded and were just had stalled for one reason or another. The items circled in red could potentially be eliminated or repurposed elsewhere. You see $575,000 to relocate the utility yard. That yard is mostly relocated. That did include some funds to purchase a piece of equipment, which still would be mostly beneficial. However, that's not the tune of $575,000. The RO Well 2A, that other red circle, that is now listed as compliance projects. So in this year's budget, we have $280,000 earmarked for compliance because at the time we weren't sure what other compliance issues we might need to fund. So that has the potential to be diverted elsewhere. In the green is the Route 17 widening project. So based on VDOT's most recent schedule, that construction is not scheduled to occur until FY29. So those funds could be pushed back a couple of years because we won't be tearing up the road just to have them tear it up again. These two are the suggested use of development fund over this year and then the next 4 years. The next 4 years is for the development fund is $1.14 million of your 1.3 available development fund. And then those other items at the bottom were part of that 10-year plan also that were potentially debt financed, but those did not start until FY28. The thinking, of course, is let's pay down some of our debt before we accrue more. So, all of that, this is a summary list of all of those projects that I talked about earlier that are not addressed in any of the planning, with the exception of the ground storage tank was in the 10-year plan, but I believe it was in year 9 or 10. Most of these other issues are not addressed. Pump stations were purposely taken out of the 10-year plan because the thought was that there would be grants available, and those have not materialized. So those projects are coming in at $28.3 million. This is my last slide. So next steps, again, consideration of a utilities fund balance policy and how we get there. Consider whether or not you would like to ask HRSD to expand the service area, going back to the earlier part of the presentation yesterday. And then direction on compliance and capital needs, which sounds like we may have had some of that discussion already, and some of it may be a wait and see with regards to compliance.
Yeah, I mean, if they can't tell us what we need to comply to, it's hard to target how to address the compliance issue. This is a lot to digest, and I would like to maybe recommend
Retreat.
we can bring this up at the retreat to talk about some more.
Yeah.
Because
I agree,
This is
Mr.
overload.
Chriscoe. This is an overload, period. But I will say, Ms. Lake, you have done one heck of a job and deserve our utmost thanks for bringing forward the issues that we face that should have been in front of us for years and has not been. So I appreciate it very much, and I'm sure the board. But as Mr. Chriscoe said, this is a lot of stuff, and but we have to tackle it. We can't have our head in the sand anymore, especially with the issues that you've just raised, because we have customers that want clean water on a regular basis. So when they get up in the morning, they can put water in their coffee pot, they can take a shower. The kids at the gym that go swimming can use up all the hot water they want at 7 o'clock in the morning, and leave enough hot water and water for us older folks that come in a little later. So thank you very much for one heck of a presentation. I have never seen anything like this in the years that I have been on the board and as part of the Utilities Subcommittee. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Ms. Steele.
I also want to thank you. It's fantastic. I think you did a great job of, I don't want to say dumbing it down, but kind of compacting it for all of us to really grasp and understand it. A couple of key points, I think. When we talk about the expansion with HRSD, not talking about the water, drinking water, but talking about HRSD, as you may recall from information I've sent you out in a weekly, never have we faced a situation where a business comes to the site plan meeting and we determine through this process that we don't have the capacity for them at our pump station. So here we have people who've owned property along Route 17, selling it, wanting to develop a retail area, and they're, left with, even though it's part of the HRSD area, we're not ready for you right now. So I think that the pump station issues, you're going to have to be facing these things that we don't know about, with DEQ. But the pump station, it needs to be addressed. This is one of the things that, whether borrowing or prioritizing or however it goes, I don't think it's fair to people who have property that is currently zoned B1 that cannot develop because we can't handle their waste.
Okay, that's all the stuff that goes to pump 11. So we're talking about areas north of 11. What about?
It's 11 and 13 that both need to be fixed.
Okay, right, but I mean, we also have a lot of property and potential development south of pump 11, we have capacity there, don't we?
We don't have an issue south.
Right,
Right,
so.
so our issue is right here at the point, at the courthouse.
Right, so all of the pump stations that are south are already hooked right into HRSD.
Right.
So we're not worried about these pump stations that collect and lift to another one. It's up here.
So developments can, I'm sorry, go ahead. No, so developments can go in south of the pump station.
South of the
South,
courthouse.
yeah, right,
South
right.
of the courthouse, no problem. The other aspect is, as Ms. Lake pointed out, your current comp plan shows that your service area or your development district goes above the HRSD map. So you have currently people who are looking at potential development in an area that's not part of the HRSD. So in order for them, if they come forward, and HRSD doesn't do anything, as Katie said several times, this doesn't come with money, oh, well, we'll go expand. But if the process would be the board asking to include that service area, and then those people, those developers would need to figure out a way to get to the Food Lion, to the lift station at 19. And then again, if 11 and 13 are fixed. So the other point I want to bring up with all this is that we had a preliminary conversation with Davenport, right? Because we need to look at where things are. That conversation needs to continue so that we can bring you all good information on what's it going to take, how much is it going to cost, what's the return on it. And then my last comment, again, besides thanking Ms. Legg for an excellent job, is that there's so many topics just like this that there needs to be education, and as well as you all philosophically deciding what you want to do, and that growth and transportation and other issues that need to happen at the retreat. As important as this is, I would still suggest that you maybe not take up retreat time, because then we're going to backlog those items, and then instead we go ahead and schedule this for an upcoming work session. And I know we normally,
But if we
have
run
a
out of
December-
budget before we budget for next year, none of this is gonna matter.
Well, we're not going to run out, I understand, we're not going to run out of budget because they're an enterprise account and they don't spend until they know they've got it. So she's planning, she knows that her revenue, she's already watching it. They will delay some of those capital items that were lower, they were repair and replace lines, things on Clements and other avenues, things like that they will not be doing until we know. But I don't know whether it would require another meeting or not, but I think that would just be my suggestion. And if you want to do that and flip at the retreat, we'll accommodate you however.
Ms. Legg, oh, sorry, Mr.
I think some of this needs to be at the retreat regardless.
Okay.
And I have a quick question. I know you said you talked to them Friday or yesterday for DEQ.
Yes.
Did they give any indication on when they may submit?
So when dealing with a state agency, there are multiple offices. So the folks that we talked to the other day were strictly the permit writer. So this was only with regards to us working through our new permit, and it was just discussions about some outlier numbers that we had seen in their calculations. And we have not heard from enforcement since we met on site with them October 29th.
So we have no idea when we're going to get the compliance issues back?
That is correct.
What's needed? Okay.
A quick question on grants. I know we have a grant writer, and whether this is any option, any opportunities.
We've gone through
Yeah.
every
She has
USDA,
been
RD,
looking.
all the different things. There are low-interest loans, but there are no grants that we qualify. We're too big, we're this, we're that, but low-interest loans are
I mean,
an
that's
option.
something that we're gonna have to look at. I mean, there's just nothing, there's no way, anyway, that's just something, like I said, all this stuff is.
And the main thing with the low-interest loans, it's the same as what was discussed with the fire department. When you go through the federal government, you can get a 40-year loan and slow things down and make your payments more manageable. The Davenport's going to say, well, you can go through, the state and get good rates And so they're not necessarily going to push off that way, but the main difference, because the rates are going to be lower and a longer term if you want to go that route with federal, but there's going to be a whole lot more hoops to jump through for those kind of loans than there are just a standard state loan for utilities.
Thank you, Ms. Lake.
Thank you so much. We need to help you back to your seat.
Trust me, I know where it is.
I bet.
Next item, let's keep the fun. Potential encroachment onto county property, Ms. Steele.
As I've mentioned this to the board in weekly and wanted to bring this up and ask for guidance. My recommendation is that the county look at putting some funds out to do some surveying to see if the information that we've gathered is correct, and also to be verifying with maybe homeowners that might be not pleased with the results. So we have a small park called Tyndall's Point Park at the right-hand side going south before you go across the bridge. And that park is one of the most historical sites we have in the county. It was fortified against the Dutch before we got into the Colonial Revolutionary War time period. It is a part of the Gloucester Point Archaeological District with the feds and the states. And what happened is a sign went up that a homeowner had put up trying to stop people from driving down in an area, nearer to their home. And when that went up, I was kind of like, where did this come from? I just happened to be going down there and noticed it. And one of the reasons that my trip down there is that we're looking at 250th grants, being able to enhance and getting ready for the American Rev 250 of what can be done at Tyndall's Point, what can be done at Gloucester Point Beach. And we also know that VEMS is planning on doing quite a bit of construction in the future in the boat basin, which will come up against that hill, that they've bought a number of the houses that face, or the lots that face the York River. I think the easiest thing is to make this understandable is to look at the fold-out piece of paper, and if I can get you all oriented that on the right-hand side of the road, the paper is Route 17, and you can see the park being lots 29473, 22153, 29473, and more. And you can kind of start to see the boat basin. And these lots that are along this about a 1-inch pathway, which is an actual right-of-way that was at one point called Bank Street. And if you think about, there used to be a bank on Great Road across from 17 that VEMS tore down, and that road connecting over here, it was Bank Street. Makes sense, right? So the current pathway, if you can kind of, and you can see it on both of them, but there's a natural way that people are driving in and on our lots to get to their lots, and there are pieces of property that appear, personal property that appear to be in the right-of-way that is supposed to be the thoroughfare. So we have encroachment onto the historic property and by personal items like a boat shown, and also not having the proper road being used. And Mr. Thomas did quite a bit of research for me, and I have the file on that, and he has the original deeds that show how much land the people had between their home and their lot size, and they are way off of what appears to be way off of their property. I did talk with Mr. McKnight about this, because this is the road that runs parallel to 17 is called Vernon Street. And most of these homes are addressed as Vernon Street, even though it was originally platted as Bank Street. And Vernon Street, the road maintenance ends there at the corner. So this is basically a county platted road. And I asked him about how we could, if if this is the correct thing to do to look at establishing that road and making it a proper driving area, it's gonna take some money. And we talked about whether there might be, and I apologize, and I don't have Ann in here to give me the term on it, but it is like the old dirt roads and bringing them up into the, you know.
So they built permanent structures on these flats?
I believe they are, I think they're mostly temporary, and I also want to caution that this is, like our GIS lines are not exact when we do these aerials. Now, the deeds show there's definitely things that have gone beyond their property boundaries. But the answer to this, to be fair and make sure that we're not falsely accusing anybody or anything like that, is to do the surveying and stake it out and look at it. And then I think, you know, my feeling is this is a very important historic piece of property. We have a back entrance to the park that is important for us. We have used it many times for maintenance. It's been backed in, there's a gate there, it's been backed into and things. And sometimes our maintenance of the park has dwindled because it was a smaller facility. But if we're able to go forward with the capital items and things that we're planning on doing in the future, there's gonna be more attention here, both from the VEMS waterfront side as well as the parks history, and getting all this straight and making sure we have our property preserved.
Is this a permanent structure right here?
Yes.
How did they get a permit to do that?
Well, I think, again, I'm not sure that it may be a permanent, but I think we need to do some more exploration.
It's a permanent structure.
Is it?
It is permanent?
Yeah.
Permit to do it.
And I feel like that right-of-way needs to be reestablished. I mean, it could be that the board is gonna look at this and not wanna make a mess of it, because if we find out there's no way, but even if that's not happening, then something else needs to be, I mean, you know, we've got people driving on historic property that,
Unfortunately, got a permanent structure on there, so somebody permitted them to do that. You're gonna tell them to take it out?
well, and
It's hard.
and also, see, these properties they've turned over to VEMS, these others are private homes. I have no idea what's gonna happen in the future on those, but these people may be here 100 years from now in the same families, or it could be that there will also be interest in, after generations or whatever of sales, and that VEMS will want those properties too. VEMS is talking about, you know, how their property will lay out, and they don't have final designs yet or anything like that. But I'm sure it will impact all of us.
How many houses are currently impacted?
3,
Three? Okay. In that area
3 or
that
4
doesn't.
depending.
So we're talking about what was the Bank Street,
Yes,
which is the area between our lots and the lots currently identified, like, you know, 1/6, whatever. So you're suggesting that we get all of our properties identified, you know, land appropriately,
yeah.
so that we don't.
I think, you know, knowledge is important. We need to know the real situation. I'm more than I know it could be a firebox of things, and I can understand that from the residents.
Especially if they're
So,
paying taxes on these hard structures.
well, and see, you're probably not paying taxes. They're not paying taxes because they don't own the
What's
property.
outside of the box? How come,
So,
how come when you look at the maps, the right-of-ways show no ownership? You try to
It's-
click in that
it's a-
box and there's nothing.
well, that's the way some of our, if you look at going up behind the hotel, motel, a lot of the old platted roads, it's just the way our GIS system is.
But this is a right-of-way granted by whom and what and what?
Well, in the original deed information, I would feel more comfortable with either an attorney or, you know, the assessor who did this information kind of explaining, but there were old properties, and that was supposed to be a whole subdivision there. And so, like Washington Street, if you're familiar with Tyndall's Point and you've pulled into where there's a parking area that's middle of the park, it looks like a really nice flat area that goes next to the earthworks. That was Washington Street. So I don't have the history on, Mr. Hutson knew some of that I didn't even know about when it was originally platted out as going to be a subdivision, but that stopped. And the county purchased the property, and then the National Park Service got part of the property, and those subdivisions weren't done, and the earthworks were saved, just like they were on part of the other side of 17. It's part of the Star Fort.
So they're not taxed on that.
Yeah, that's that like inch line.
Look at the assessments, see if the buildings.
Road in the middle of it?
Yep.
Back?
Yep,
So it's the one exactly in the middle.
yeah. And if you line that up with looking at the overall park area, and you see Washington Street and Bank Street, they're parallel roads with lots on each side, is what it was supposed to be developed.
Correspond to this one right here? This one on the first page?
So the first one, if you see Public Road at the bottom, that is Vernon Street.
Can I get a copy of the deeds which?
Sure, and I have,
Maps which apparently are supposedly created this right away? Because this is, other than our discussions about how to broach this subject with the board, it's all news and Greek to me. Yeah, I'd like to see, because then I can discern. I can't do the survey, and I agree with Ms. Steele 100% that if this is an issue that we want to deal with, we should have a survey done.
yeah,
But then the survey should work in conjunction with attorneys who are not surveyors, they're lawyers.
right.
Who can discern whether we actually have a right of way. So let's do that.
And this was obviously not anything budgeted, so it would have to come out of county administrator contingency.
Where was the, when you look at this, where was the sign on this?
There's a whole group of mailboxes, and you can kind of see them at a little, looks like a little circular area as they come down and make a hard right turn. You can see the little mailboxes, and there is a sign right in that area. I did send a letter to the homeowner saying we needed to have that sign taken down because it is not a private, you know, like, you can't say keep out. We have the right to go to our property too, that is on the backside, and the public has the right to go to the park.
But we haven't used this right of way
We have used this right of way
through this house and the boat?
The right of, I'm sorry, we've used the existing driving area. So in other words,
The one depicted on this, this map with the,
And-
one in the middle has a house on it that takes up the whole thing.
well,
So we
part,
haven't used it.
part of this is when you do these aerials, these lines are not exact. I mean, there was one of them that would have made the other, you know, property at the end look like their house wasn't even on their lot.
But even if it's
So-
a little off, we haven't used it. There's trees, there's a house, there's a boat, there's nowhere near this is a driving lane.
Are you doing
In
the
the
long
middle,
way
in the
across?
middle,
Are you
the
do-
middle. I'm going right
No,
in the
no,
middle.
no, no,
No.
no.
That's what I just
It's
asked.
Sorry,
diagonal.
this 1 inch going diagonally across, and it still has items in it. So in between all of the parcel numbers, you see an area that does not have a parcel number. And that is the right-of-way shown on the, here where it says Bank Street, 50-foot wide.
So, in the middle of what is depicted, there's two structures. The boat's not in it.
No, the boat's on.
Boat's over on the county's park property,
Okay, so the boat's not involved, but in the middle, and then there's a whole bunch of trees.
according to this, it looks, it appears that way.
There's a shed that's being taxed.
Okay.
So it definitely needs to be straightened out, one way or the other. Especially as new development goes in on those other parcels. So, am I okay with just a general consensus that we, and I'll obviously work with the county attorney, we'll hire somebody, I'll get you all the information that Mr. Thomas has already done research on too.
What is your proposed action?
Survey.
Survey and then come back to you all. And I started to say, I know that this is a sensitive issue with potential neighbors and things, and so once we have a little bit more information, I'm fine with, you know, doing some kind of a public meeting down there meeting people. If people are watching now or people in the audience want to call me, I'll be glad to meet them there. This is a fact-finding mission at this point. I don't want it to sound like it's accusatory.
I still have issue that there's parcels with no numbers.
We don't
that bugs me.
put parcel numbers on the right-of-ways. So all of those streets and things, they don't have parcel numbers.
Do we
They're
know-
not taxed.
What is this white building?
A garage.
There's a shed and a trailer on the
So
property,
that's not being taxed?
an RV. No, I pulled it up, it's being taxed,
$150
$150.
value.
Must not be very good.
Still taxed. There's a precedent there.
And there's also, but there's not tax on the property. So if a personal property item is moved over onto somebody else's property, but it's known to be them through DMV, they're gonna get taxed on it, somebody's trailer or whatever. But the actual real estate land, nobody should be paying for that right of way.
Let me that picture, the white thing.
That's a camper, that's a shed.
Is that it, Ms. Steele?
That is it.
Supervisor discussion.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, if I could, real quick. Mr. Chair, I was contacted by a constituent who found out some information when she went to the zoning office to check into getting a permit for a modular home. And it's a piece of family property that's on 17 up at Ordinary, that there's a trailer on the property now. Now, the property has always been in the family. It's family land. The parents owned it. Parents died. Brother put a trailer there, and brother passed away. Sister and her husband were taking care of it. They stepped in, took over, and her husband passed, and then she wants to be back on family land. So she's been living in the trailer. So she decided she wants a much nicer place. So she went shopping for a modular home. And she was told that she could not put a modular home there because it was zone B1. Now, she could put a trailer there, another trailer. You can replace the trailer with the trailer. No matter, it probably could be 50 years old, and she could replace that with the trailer, but she's not able to beautify her property and make her property nicer by putting a nice modular home there. And some of this, I think, was done back in the 80s or early 90s, this zoning. And I talked to Ms. Steele about it, and also Ms. Steele talked to Ann and Mr. Wilmot. And Ms. Steele, actually, she had them to count how many trailers on 17 from the point down to the Main Street area. And I believe it was 18 trailers.
Right, but not all B1.
But not all B1. And I was telling Ms. Steele also, I said, now, right where Page Middle School is, you know where that tile place is? You have the tile place. My aunt sold her house right there a month ago, right on 17, and that wasn't B1. And she just got it sold. And the problem that I'm kind of having with it is that the not being able to put something nicer somewhere on 17, not, taking it and replacing a trailer with a trailer. This lady, she wants something nicer on 17. And I don't know what we can do. You've talked, and I know, but what is it? If staff if they can just find out if there's something we can do or something.
And I had made a suggestion that possibly if the board wanted to consider directing staff to look at a potential rezoning. The reason why I went and looked at how many trailers, because you don't want to grab one lot and go rezone and have spot rezoning. But if there was a situation where a number of homes faced the same, dilemma or the same restriction, and so we're down to 7, 8 sites, that is a manageable number that could be contacted. I have no idea if those people would want to be single family versus B1. If they were gonna sell, they might think they're gonna make more money as B1 than they would as a single family. The other thing is the board indicated, the previous board, and then the board with you all keeping the zoning as it is, you've got this development area, so there are a number of, not just trailers, but like some of these dilapidated homes that we've talked about, they're also B1. So if somebody, originally we thought, oh, well, what if somebody wants to take that house and make it nicer? It would be the same thing, they wouldn't be allowed to because of the zoning restriction on it, because you can't have a house in B1. So, and I know Mr. Wilmot can add more to the legal. I'm just saying from our perspective, if there's something you all want us to look at that could remedy the situation, we will look, but legally, I think our hands are tied.
Yes. B1 is your most intensive business district, and you do not allow single-family residents in your B1 district. Whether you want to or not is entirely up to you, but logically it makes sense. It's your most business-intensive district. So going forward, the thought is to discourage single-family residences in B1. Now, state law requires that you grandfather in current residences, or current as of the date the B1 district was created, and allow them to continue to be used as single-family. Now, as Mr. Smith indicated, there's a trailer there, and state law requires localities to allow replacement of a trailer or a manufactured home with a trailer or a manufactured home. I surmise that this was in response to a Supreme Court of Virginia case, which indicated that no, you could not replace those. If single family was not lawful in your zoning district and had been discontinued for 2 or more years, you could not replace them. Well, I surmise that the manufactured trailer lobby got to the General Assembly back in the 80s and said, no, we want to sell our product. And so we want you to require that localities allow replacement of a trailer with a trailer or a manufactured home with a manufactured home. And they did that. They allowed it. And so localities are required, Gloucester County is required to allow this property owner to replace the trailer with the trailer.
But not a manufactured home.
Or a manufactured home with a manufactured home. But not a stick-built home. So the current law is that you can't replace a trailer with a manufactured home, which may sound counterintuitive, but if I'm correct in my surmises, if that's the right word, summarization, that the General Assembly was persuaded by the lobby to require localities to allow replacement of a trailer with a trailer in B1 or a manufactured home with a manufactured home in B1. They didn't talk about stick-built homes. They didn't talk about modular homes. So what we're left with is the state-imposed requirement that in our business-intensive districts, which we do not allow single-family dwellings, the thought is to encourage them to be discontinued, to be utilized for business purposes, to be sold if they can't, if they're too small, to be sold to adjacent properties, to be developed for business. That's your business corridor. That apparently has been the thought historically with this board. You are constrained to allow this trailer, which has been continually utilized for residential purposes, to be replaced with a trailer, yet they're not allowed to build a stick-built home.
But a manufactured home is a stick-built home.
Modular is what she wants to do.
It is,
And
but it's
modular.
stick-built and located to another location,
Okay, she wants to do a modular home.
which is stick-built at the factory.
Right, so she's not allowed to do that.
So, but the double wide trailer, if it was one of those double wides,
So back in.
She could do a double wide.
Back in August of
It doesn't make sense to me.
Back in August of 2017, a previous board, some of whom you may have been on, you were talking about the problem of these homes, some dilapidated structures, some single-family homes on Route 17. And I outlined some options in a memo dated July 12th of 2017. Identifying the problems, the difficulty or inability to develop and use small property zone B1 along the Route 17 corridor. And one of the problems that was identified was some of these homes, whether they want continue to be utilized. So it's an issue that has been looked at before and perhaps needs to be resuscitated and regurgitated and looked at again. So I think part of the problem is the state wasn't farsighted enough to know that when you require a locality to replace a trailer with a trailer, you're not going to require them to allow replacement of a trailer with a stick-built home. Now, having said that, the law disfavors continuation of grandfathered non-conforming uses. The law does not like that. The law supposes that you don't want to allow those uses to continue or be expanded or improved upon. And so that's where it's coming from. You have a B1 district, business intensive, where your presumed intent is to not to want to allow continuation of residential uses. But you could, for example, allow single-family homes in the B1 district if you wanted to. So that's one of the options. So if you like administration and me and planning and zoning to look at options to allow this constituent to replace her trailer with a stick-built home, you can do that, and we're willing and we're happy to do that. I'm always hesitant to want to do a lot with reference to a zoning amendment after a 7-year effort, which has recently culminated in a successful passage of a totally revamped zoning ordinance at the behest of one person. But we're happy to look at it.
Anyone else?
And you know, some of this land, I mean, it's not even enough land to have a turn lane.
I spoke to her too.
Mhm. I mean, you don't even share, not even enough for a turn lane. It's not making sense. I think we should look at it. I really do.
Mr. Wilmot, doesn't all this go back to the day one when the zoning ordinance was approved, where initially a lot of people were opposed to 17 being single family, and it went back and forth where those people who owned property on 17, because I think there was suggestions of making a lot of 17 single family to restrict development to certain areas of the county, but it ended up that the people who own property on 17 felt that they would be, it wouldn't be appropriate because they could sell their property for more as a B1, and now we're seeing some of the issues related to the early days in the 80s when the zoning ordinance was approved, because I remember being here, the debates that were being placed on the table regarding what was going to happen with 17. And so while the suggestion was let's try to keep development off 17, the people that owned all those properties in 17 were not pleased with that, and it ended up where we are today. Most of 17, except for what little spots, are all B1. And so, yeah.
I think that's part of it. That was the push at the time.
Yeah.
So one potential remedy or solution could be that, given that the state requires that we allow trailers to be replaced with trailers, that we allow trailers to be replaced with stick-built. You could do that. I don't know whether you want to, but you could do that.
Why wouldn't we? I mean, now, and if
Well,
you-
because
and-
you
and
would
look
be
at-
encouraging
I know-
you'd be encouraging the
I know what you're saying.
continuation of what you said
I
historically.
totally
that you don't want.
understand what you're saying, but take a look at 17 and look at all of those homes that the grass and trees and all are growing up around them that are not selling. I mean, you got one piece of property right from where Mr. Davis has his business. It's a greenhouse and a brick building out there. That lady has said that she bought a modular home, put it somewhere else, and has not been able to sell that property. And I know that's been at least 15 years it's been sitting there, not able to sell it. And I mean, it's family land. I mean, you should be able to do what you want to with your family land.
I agree, and part of it has to do with its continued use. And we're not going to look at anybody who hasn't continually lived on a parcel. I think that's where we have to look is which properties on 17 that are Zone B1 that are currently residences. That's where we have to look, and that's the only ones that we could possibly.
And the August 2017 memo had supposedly those properties listed.
That's a long time ago. A lot of information's come in one ear and out of this ear.
That was like yesterday.
For you, maybe.
I thank you for that, because this place it's been continued use years. And now you're saying, nope, you got to put me, if she wants to, she can go ahead and buy a 1970 trailer and stick there, and it's okay. But don't do anything to make this property better. It just doesn't make sense.
Mr. Wilmot, could you share with us that memo again from 2017?
I will, and I will.
Change the date.
Well, I won't email it, but Cindy will.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I meant.
We'll send
And it's not directly on point but it does have portions of it that will address the issue, at least partially, yes.
And
Yes, sir.
based on code, you can't replace a trailer with a manufactured home.
You can't replace it with a modular.
Modular.
Well, you kept saying trailer to trailer,
I know. You can do
manufactured.
trailer to trailer and manufactured to manufactured, but you can't do modular.
Although modular is built manufactured.
Bought in two pieces.
Modular is considered the same as a regular residence.
I know, but
So,
Well, seriously. They bring it in
Apparently,
on two pieces.
apparently there is a discernible difference between modular and manufactured.
yes, there definitely is, and how they're taxed and everything.
So that's what they're going on.
Hey, and that's a good thing too, right? Taxes,
Right.
you should pay more taxes. I think from what I was hearing, I've done some little bit of research on it. It's the way the roof is shaped, what makes it, they start calling it.
Foundation too.
Yeah,
I did ask, the homes that are on 17 that are in B1, the assessors take into account that it's really residential use, and they are not assessing them like the value on the land for commercial property. I believe, I hope I haven't misspoke, but I believe that's because it's residential use. But maybe I did misspeak. I
What was
know
that?
Ms. Hare's always watching, but this was something that Mr. Thomas had shared with me, so I'll check.
I missed that.
Okay, so you're gonna look into that, Mr. Wilmot, and send it to us?
Please,
Okay.
thank you,
Any
sir.
other things on supervisor discussion? Then we have one other item.
So moved.
All in favor for a second? Is there a second? All in favor? Meeting adjourned.